Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Going Places with Abu Maika. This video is the second in a series I'm doing about the different ways of moving to Canada. This video is about how to move to Canada as a student. So I'm going to tell you how you can move to Canada as a student, graduate, work, become a permanent resident, and then become a citizen. It's very possible to do that. So you want to find out more about that, do stay tuned. If you haven't watched the earlier video, please do. Here's the link. It lays the foundation for all the videos that are going to follow after that. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the study route. Okay, now in order to study in Canada, you need what's called a study permit. Okay, study permit allows you as a foreign national to come to Canada as an international student in order to study, a program that qualifies for study permit, right? Not all programs require a study permit. Like if you're studying for a short program, like 6 months or less, you don't need a study permit. You can just come on a standard visitor visa and do a 6-month course. But then if you're going to study something for more than 6 months, then you need a study permit. Now, in order to be issued a study permit, you need to be accepted at a designated learning institution. Not every institution qualifies you for a study permit, okay? So you need to be accepted at a designated learning institution. There's a whole list of them. Here's the link. I'm also going to put it in the description. Now, once you get accepted at a designated learning institution, make sure that that institution offers post-graduation work permit eligible programs. That's what will enable you to work in Canada or to look for work in Canada afterwards, okay? So, two very important things. One, be accepted at a DLI. Two, enroll for a PGWP eligible program. What does that mean? Okay, not all programs, even though you are enrolled at a DLI, will qualify you for a PGWP. For example, if you come to Canada to just study English, okay, then you won't be allowed to get a work permit afterwards. So that's one example. Of course, you can find out more on the link that I'm going to put in the description here. Now, the next thing that you have to do is you have to meet the institution's requirements for admission into your program, your desired program of study. Okay, so some prospective international students often mix immigration issues and institution issues, right? Very important. Don't mix up the two. Your institution will have its own requirements, and then immigration will have its own requirements. So for the institution, you have to prove that you meet the eligibility requirements for the program you want to study. So if they say, okay, I want to study an MBA, or these are the undergraduate courses that you need, and you may be asked to send your transcripts from your school for your undergraduate program, for example. You may be asked to send course descriptors, to get exemptions, things like that. It will differ from institution to institution and from program to program. So there's no standard, okay? Which universities can you study at? Any DLI, okay? Now, once you meet the institution's requirements for admission, they might say, prove your proficiency in English, okay? In which case you might have to do, they will tell you which, what they accept as proof of English language proficiency. It may be IELTS, academic, right? Now, I need to mention at this point that sometimes people ask, do you need to take IELTS for a study visa? Okay, no. From an immigration perspective, no. But from an institution's perspective, you may need to prove to them that you know English if you're going to follow a course, if you're going to study for a course that's taught in English. Okay, so if the institution tells you we need IELTS academic, then immigration will want to see that you meet that requirement, because when you're now applying for immigration wants to be satisfied that you meet the requirements for admission in order to issue you the study permit. Okay, I hope that's making sense. The institution might say pay an application fee, write a statement of purpose, whatever. Do it. Okay, do whatever the institution tells you need to do. If they tell you need to pay deposit for your fees, do it. Okay, so once you are cleared with the institution will give you an acceptance letter. Okay, then you've finished with the institution, right? Now you go to immigration. The institution is no longer involved, right? The institution basically said, okay, Abu, we have given you everything. Okay, now we're now waiting for you to come to Canada. So this way you now go to immigration and say, hey, I've been accepted at this institution. I now need to come to Canada to study. I need permission to study in Canada. Okay, so you cannot apply for a study permit I mean, without an acceptance, without being accepted into a DLI. Okay, except in certain circumstances, which I will talk about in future videos. But for the purposes of this video, you need to be accepted at a DLI in order to get a study permit. Okay, now the study permit will allow you to study a particular program at that particular institution. It will be valid for the duration of your program plus an extra 90 days. So the extra 90 days is, sort of like you've graduated, you've finished your studies. Those 90 days are for you to to either leave Canada or to apply to extend your stay if you do qualify to extend your stay. Okay, so when you're applying for a study permit, you need to prove 3 things. Okay, now I mentioned in the earlier video for what applies to all non-immigrant visas. Okay, you need to prove acceptance, you need to prove funds, and you need to prove that you leave Canada. Okay, now for this video I'm just going to talk about proving funds, because the other 2 I already talked about in the earlier video. Now the government of Canada wants to see that you've got enough money for 3 things. Number 1, you've got enough money to cover the cost of your tuition. Number 2, you've got enough money to cover the cost of your accommodation, your living expenses. Number 3, you've got enough money for a return transportation from wherever you're going to come from. You are allowed to bring dependents with you when you come to study in Canada. There's no rule that says only you must come. You can bring your spouse, you can bring your kids. Okay. The advantage of bringing a spouse is that your spouse can also apply for what's called an open work permit. I will talk about that in another video. And your kids can get study permits that are called open study permits. Okay, so if they're of school going age, for example, you can enroll them at a primary school or whatever in Canada, right? Now, how much money do you need to show when you're applying for a study permit? Okay, now you need to show at least 10,000 Canadian dollars for yourself as the primary applicant. Then 4,000 for the first family member. So let's say if it's your spouse, 4,000 for your spouse, and then 3,000 for each additional family member. So if you've got like you, spouse, and 1 kid, that's 10,000 plus 4,000 plus 3,000. Okay, so that's 17,000, right? And that's for the first year. Usually you need to show enough funds for the first year up front. Okay, so you don't need to show that, hey, my program is going to cost 40 grand for 3 years, so here's the 40 grand. No, right? But at least show enough funds for the first year. Tuition, you can be sponsored. Okay, so for example, if you're coming here on a scholarship, you can show that, hey, this institution is offering me a 50% scholarship on my tuition. So the balance is, let's say if it's 10,000, 50% is covered, the balance is 5,000, right? So you show that, hey, my tuition is going to cost me 5,000 because the other 5,000 is covered, right? So make sure you break down those amounts to say tuition, it's covered 100% by this scholarship. Then immigration will say, okay, so how about your living expenses? How about your return tickets? Okay, two-way transportation. So show that, hey, basically just show that all of my expenses are going to be covered, right? And then of course you meet the other requirements: acceptance, proof of repatriation to your home country. So once you submit your application, once it's approved, you'll get a study permit approval letter. I'm not sure what that looks like, but they will inform you that your study permit is approved. You may need to give biometrics, you may need to pass a medical exam, but after everything is processed, you get your study permit approval. And then if you need a visa to come to Canada, this is very important. There's no such thing as a study visa. People always say study visa, study visa, study visa. We understand, okay, what that means, but what you're actually applying for is not a study visa, it's a study permit. And then you only apply for a visa to enter Canada. Okay, so if you need a visa to enter Canada, then you apply for the TRV, temporary resident visa, go non-immigrant visa, whatever it is, visitor visa, things like that, right? So that's what facilitates your entry into Canada. And now, what happens when you then graduate? When you graduate from the institution, you've got 180 days to apply for a post-graduation work permit, right? And you are only granted that PGWP if you have met all the conditions of your study permit. You haven't violated anything. You are allowed to work part-time while you're studying, 20 hours a week. If you violate that, if you work for more hours than you are allowed, then you will not be granted a study permit. I mean, you will not be granted a post-graduation work permit. So very important, comply with all the conditions imposed on you for your study permit. Like I said, like you've graduated, you've got 90 days, okay, after graduation to just live in Canada. Within those 90 days, if you want to apply for your PGWP within Canada, apply within those 90 days, okay? Because sometimes people will say, I've got 6 months to apply for post-graduation work permit. But then if you stay in Canada now beyond the 90 days after you graduate, like after your study permit expires, then you are now getting yourself in trouble with immigration. So within the 90 days after you graduate, if you're still in Canada, like you can apply for that PGWP within Canada. If you leave Canada, right, you can still apply for a post-graduation work permit from outside Canada. It's allowed as long as it's within 6 months, within 180 days of your graduation. Okay. So once you get that post-graduation work permit, you will be allowed to work in Canada, right? For any employer, it's an open work permit. Okay, so it's not a closed work permit that ties you to a particular employer. It's open. You can work part-time, you can work full-time, whatever. The post-graduation work permit is issued for usually they match the duration of your study. So you study 1 year, you get a work permit for 1 year. You study 2 years, you get a work permit for 3 years, right? 3 years is usually the maximum. You can't extend a PGWP, so it's issued only once. Make good use of that PGWP. Make sure that within that time frame, within the validity of your post-graduation work permit, make yourself eligible for PR. Okay. So I mean, I will talk about this a little bit more when I do a video on express entry, but you can use that PGWP time to to gain some work experience, so that you can apply for express entry under CEC, so that you can apply for provincial nomination depending on where you studied. Okay, so once you then do that, you meet the requirements of permanent residency, you can now apply for permanent residency. But that's not the purpose of this video. I just wanted to show you how the study permit application and how the study route works. Okay, so I hope you found this video useful. I'm sure there's a lot more I can say, but hey, I'll post some links here where you can find some more information. I would love to hear your feedback in the comment section, and guys, I'll see you